I'm here with my good friend Fred Merriam, and he's a member of the Chelmsford Board of Directors of the Chelmsford Historical Society. And Fred is the Director of Information Technology and Accessions. Is that right, Fred?
Right.
And what does the accessions
the
do?
director part, but
Okay, yeah.
accessions means cataloging of the items that we have in the museum, and also accepting and deciding what to accept in the way of donations. When people have things from their parents' estate or their grandparents, they don't know what to do with it, but they think it might be of historical interest to the town. So we look at it, and if it has a strong Chelmsford connection, especially pictures, objects, even clothing from the past, if it has a strong connection, then we decide as a committee. I'll maybe email some of the board members and send them a picture and say, hey, do we want this? For instance, we had an offer, a very nice antique potty chair a few weeks ago, and it was offered by another town, and it probably in years past had some value, but it really didn't have any Chelmsford connection, so we unanimously decided not to accept it.
Yes.
But we have limited space here. We already have quite a large collection between the store and the House Museum and the Watt Stevens Center. So we're pretty careful about what we accept.
Yes. And you've been doing great work for the Historical Society and for the town of Chelmsford, partially by authoring a number of books about the Chelmsford history. One of them is this book right here, right, Fred? This one?
Right. This is from a couple of years ago. It's called Chelmsford Revisited, and it's the second Arcadia book that was written about Chelmsford, and this one has some really excellent pictures done by Arthur I. Emerson, who's a local photographer, and several other donations. And every picture has historical facts along with it, items of interest, a twist to each picture that you may not have ever seen before or heard of. And we have a lot of comments from people that own some of these houses or live nearby, and they're all excited about it.
Well, they're wonderful books, Fred. I love these. I love all your books, but especially when they have the photos of the historical photos, and then you're limited with the amount of space you could devote to each photo, right, Fred? Like one paragraph or something like that?
It's actually word count, 50 to 70 words per photo.
Yeah. So it's very
strict.
Very strict, but it's a nice way to learn about the history of Chelmsford, a little at a time if you want, or you could read the whole thing at once, whichever you prefer. But I love these old photos, and you may have noticed on the Chelmsford news page on Facebook now, every Thursday, on Throwback Thursday, I've been posting a historical photo about Chelmsford, many of them that you have archived for us that I've been using from the Chelmsford Historical Society. Is that right, Fred?
Yes, well, I believe in spreading the history, and if you can take these photos and put a little historical perspective to each one, I think people will pick it up and they'll appreciate it as time goes on.
Yes, I think so, Fred. So it's a wonderful thing. You've devoted tons of hours photographing these old photographs. Some are glass slides, right? And so it takes a while to get them all archived.
Well, let's qualify that a little bit. Back over 10 years ago, I had a few photo collections accessible, and I photographed them. Then we got a grant from the town, and we got an excellent scanner, and it will do negatives and glass slides.
Nice.
So in order to use a photo in a book for publication purposes, it has to be scanned. So photos aren't allowed.
Yes, it has to be
So we do
scanned.
very high resolution scans, and these are excellent too. If somebody sees one they like, we've actually given use permission to various organizations, companies in particular, to use these photos in their boardrooms or lobbies, that sort of thing.
And where I find all of them are pretty much is on the Chelmsford Historical Society has a web page, right? It's called Chelmsford Historical Society.
It's a whole website.
A whole website. And so one of the catalog items there is the slides or old photos, right, what's called. And I look under there, and then you could click on all these old pictures, maybe hundreds of them, I think.
It is literally hundreds. There's 4 categories. There's library, which are books. There's photographs, which includes negatives, glass slides, and postcards and photos. There's objects, which would include furnishings, things like that, and library, which is books and various publications.
Wow.
So my passion happens to be the photograph part of it.
Yes, it's wonderful. And you're a great photographer too, right, Fred? I think. So you take some nice photos. But another book that you've done is this one right here, right, Fred? You want to talk about that a little bit? What it is, I mean, and what it's all about?
Okay, well, the story behind this is through the Historical Society back in '03. I had my arm twisted to visit a historical commission meeting. Turns out they wanted to get their information out. They had 4 file cabinets full of historical information that Jane Drury and others had researched as part of the Historical Commission's mission. And this information wasn't accessible to anybody unless you had a key to go into these file cabinets. So they were wondering if I could help them make the information public. So I had never done a website or anything, but I really, I enjoyed seeing what was in the file cabinet. I got pretty excited about it. So finally I ended up saying, well, I've never done a website. I have no idea to do it, but how to do it. But I'll give it a try because this information needs to get out there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we organized it and put it in archival folders. And I took boxes of these folders home and scanned them. And this is old tech. This is about 10 years ago. So the website grew as time went on, got better, and got bigger and bigger. And so that was actually the Historic Commission website. So anyway, in the file cabinets, we moved. We were in town office. We got moved to town hall, which is really town hall, not Old Town Hall, but there was a sign out once that said Old Town Hall.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I don't blame people for calling it Old Town Hall.
Yeah.
And then we moved back. We said, okay, these file cabinets are really old. So let's get some new cabinets. So I had the action as a committee member to purchase some used cabinets. So we got some good used cabinets. And one sort of a rainy day, one of the guys had a van, and we brought a whole bunch of boxes over, and I took the boxes and took the folders and tried to put them in some organized fashion in these 4 brand new cabinets that we had. So I found one folder, and it had a piece of red yarn wrapped around it, which was very strange because none of the other folders were identified like that. And I opened the folder, or unwrapped it, opened it up, and it had a table of contents, an introduction, and a conclusion. So I'm looking at it, and it was from Eleanor Parkhurst, and I realized, oh my God, I had heard a rumor that there was a history book that never got published. I said, this is the manuscript, and it was right here in our archives. So as I was looking through the various folders, I found mixed in among all the stuff, news clippings and so on, were actually all the chapters. So because now I had an index, I knew what the chapters were. So now I find the folder on the fire department, the police department, and town government, and all the various chapters that you see in the book here. And the next thing was we had this really rough manuscript that was hand typed on a really cranky typewriter that had highlighters and missing letters, and it was quirky typewriter. So there's no hope of scanning, which you could do if it was good text, and it had a lot of hand corrections and different colors too.
Oh, gee. And you went through it
and
all.
yellowed paper. So I can type fairly well because I learned back in college the right way to type, and I started on it. And I said, "There's no way I'm ever going to get through this." So, and I actually ended up getting a team of 5 or 6 different people to transcribe.
Nice.
Some people did a couple of chapters, some people did a long chapter. So we had a team, it was a team effort.
Nice.
And everybody transcribed it, sent it back. Of course, now I've got Eleanor's errors and quirky sentence structure. She tended to make long run-on sentences, plus the new errors from my team. So I had to go through and edit all the spelling. Once you get through with all the spell check errors, okay, then you get a category of errors that you got words that are spelled right but don't have the wrong meaning. And then after the chapters were all assembled, I ended up actually writing the last 2, the business and industry And then I decided to do a final chapter called Epilogue, because Eleanor, if you notice the title here, it says
History of
1910
Yeah.
to 1970, okay? And I wrestled with that title for quite a while, because when I was doing this was 2010, okay? So this is really a history of 1910 to 2010, so it's 100 years of Chelmsford history. But to be fair, all the chapters but 2 were done by Eleanor, and they ended about 1976, okay? And to be fair, if I were to write the next 40 years, that would take me the rest of my lifetime. So I said, okay, let me write an epilogue, because I know how the last 40 years turned out. So let's take everything that Eleanor was working on and documenting and explain how they turned out now. Okay, for instance, when Eleanor was writing the book, they talked year after year about the need for a sewer system, okay? After Eleanor died, the sewer system got approved, and by 2010 it was actually finished.
Yeah.
So I was able to give all the statistics on when it started and how it evolved.
Nice.
So it brings you all the way up to 2010. Town government, same thing. They had a town meeting system, and then after that they went to town meeting reps, and then they went to the town manager system.
Yeah.
So that's brought up in the epilogue chapter,
Oh,
which is the
nice.
last chapter in the book.
Nice.
The senior center. So there were a lot of different things that happened after Eleanor's time. So, but I didn't want to advertise that
Yeah.
this was filling in the 40 years, because there's a lot of people between 1970s and 80s and 90s
Yeah.
that might be disappointed if they were looking for the detailed history on their time.
Well, you did a great job, and these books are still available.
Oh, I was going to tell you one other thing. We had some proofreaders, and I had 3 different proofreaders, including one that worked on the independent newspaper, Kevin Zimmerman. You
Oh,
may
yeah, I
retire.
remember Kevin.
But after we got through all that, Judy Buswick, who's a professional author here in town, I twisted her arm. She agreed to review it.
Nice.
And when I got the manuscript back, it probably had 10 to 20 red marks on every single page, hundreds and hundreds of pages. So she actually took Eleanor's run-on sentence structure and like one sentence paragraphs and things like that. When she got through with it, when I got through reworking every single one of her corrections I agreed with, it became a very readable book. So I have to say, if anybody saw Eleanor's manuscript, you'd hardly find it compares with what's in here. This is a very readable book, and I've had a lot of feedback that people actually enjoy just sitting down and reading it. So it's more than a history book. It's a readable, and we tried to make sense. Like she had there's paragraphs that got rearranged, so they're in the correct order and they make sense.
Wonderful.
So there's a lot of work done to make this readable and understandable.
Well, it's a great contribution to the history of Chelmsford, as are your previous book, and the book you're working on now is a follow-on to this book, right? Another Arcadia book
Yes.
of North Chelmsford, is it?
Was collaborated. They used quite a few pictures from a variety of sources, most of them the Historic Society, and they did some of North Chelmsford and some of Chelmsford. About 35 were North Chelmsford, and the rest were Chelmsford. So North Chelmsford really didn't get very well represented in the first book. When I started this book, once I got all the pictures chosen and the chapters, there was more than enough just to do this book on Chelmsford.
Right,
So
yes,
my decision at the time was to do one just on Chelmsford and save the North Chelmsford for later. Now it turns out I've got all the pictures already lined up. I've got them all mastered, except I got 2 today. I got some from Bernie Reddy on the Roby Sword Factory. He had some in his, along with his Roby Sword collection. So
Nice.
I'll scan those, and I'm going to use a couple of those in the chapter on West Chelmsford. That's the last chapter in the book.
And when do you think that will be published, Fred,
Hoping
your
to
new
get it,
book?
I'm hoping to get it out for next July 4. But
July 4th of
but no
2016.
guarantees, yeah.
That'd be great.
I still have to sign a contract, and then it's going to be working, hard work all winter long to get that finished.
Oh, you signed a contract before you write the book?
Well, in this case, I already knew all the requirements, so I said, okay, I'm going to go do the pictures first, and then lay them into a Word document.
Yeah.
I'll start writing the text that goes with the pictures, and once I decide that I'm pretty sure I can get it done by a certain date, because when you sign the contract, you have to sign a date that you're going to have it ready. And they reward you for getting it done early, and I don't want to find out what happens if you get it done late.
Yeah,
So,
right.
So I want to
Well,
be confident that
yes.
I can get it done, and I'm guessing it's going to be ready for next July 4.
Well, thank you for doing so much for the history and the history of Chelmsford and the Chelmsford Historical Society. And we should also mention that your wife has been a recent president of the Chelmsford Historical Society, right, Carol Merriam?
Yes, she was vice president for 4 years and president for 4 years also.
Yeah.
So it was her work in the Historical Society that got me interested. I also wanted to mention, we talked about the Historical Society website with the pictures, objects, library, and so on. The Historical Commission website, I also recommend for people that want to learn about anything about monuments, meeting halls, waterways, homes in Chelmsford. There's a list of topics, and you click on each one and you get a whole selection of things to see there.
Do you have old photos that I could use on Facebook as well, on the Chelmsford Historical Commission site?
Yes, the Historical Commission has photos. They're lower resolution, but I think they're fine for emailing.
Great.
And in fact, those photos many times have some historical interpretation along with them that you can
That's
you can summarize and spread the word, kind of like Johnny Appleseed of
Yes.
history, you know.
Wonderful. Well, I love doing it because I'm also on the board with you of the Chelmsford Historical Society, and I love the history of Chelmsford. I love history itself. I love all that you and your wife are doing for the Historical Society. So thank you very much, Fred. Thank you for talking with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me over.
My pleasure.
Or actually, thank you for coming over to join us here at the tent here.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Fred. Thank you.